All right, so in this test, I tried something that helped with my power a decent amount. So much so that I'm going to be adopting this as part of my form going forward. I hit 66 miles per hour very easily, and then got 67 and 68 that probably felt the easiest for those speeds. And then I hit 69 twice, which I've only hit 69 in one other session before this, and it felt kind of similar, I guess, in terms of effort. So really promising. In order to explain what it was I was working on, I want to start by defining some terms first to make it more clear. All right, so if this is my run-up line and I'm throwing this way, I call this the feet being offset, or they're both in their own lanes. So if I X-step from here, it stays in its lane, and I bring the brace foot forward and it stays in its lane. That's kind of what I've thought about most of the time I've been playing disc golf, and it's like this left step opens up so that I can then bring this right step over into its lane, and then I try to keep this offset as I go forward. So very linear run-up angle and getting those feet set in those positions. To me, it seemed like it was the simplest way to learn. It's like get onto your run-up line and just keep going, right? The feet being offset like this is helpful for a lot of reasons. One of them is when you brace, it helps get this hip to start rotating when they're offset like this. But also, it affects your balance, right? If I'm bouncing on my back leg right now, and as I put this foot out more forward, I have more weight forward. So now I'm having to kind of lean back if I want to stay balanced on this foot. But what if I want to be more in hyzer posture? I have to start bending this knee more to get this weight back and keep it over. But if I'm also anticipating I'm going to be going into this, put my weight on this foot so I can start X-stepping. Now my weight is over this foot, and then when I get onto the X-step, if I lift this foot, all this weight from the feet being offset is making me go straight back down, forward like this. So it's hard to stay balanced on the back foot for long enough to coil and to not feel rushed. So a lot of people feel rushed to get into the brace here because you feel your weight going right into it. So you reach back super early, and do all sorts of things. All right, and another term here, rear hip coil. So if I lift up this foot and now I rotate my whole body, that's rear hip coil. That's what I'm calling that. Even though my shoulders have turned backwards, I have not coiled my shoulders yet. So here's a 90-degree angle, and this is what it looks like when I coil my shoulders. So now I have hip to shoulder separation. Now I don't. And I also have, when I do this rear hip coil, you think about it like, ground to hip separation. My foot is staying where it is, so I feel all this tension here in the rear hip instead of turning the foot backwards and now running up backwards with no coiling, which a lot of people do because it's hard to, if I turn my hips backwards like this, it's very hard to run like that. That's why you don't do it right away. You do it when you're on your X step and you can balance and do that, and your momentum can carry you forward and you can stay balanced. So that rear hip coil is basically internal hip rotation of the rear leg except the rear foot is not pivoting on the ground. You're preventing it from pivoting, and so the whole body is rotating around. Also, a few other caveats with rear hip coil. When I rear hip coil, since the whole body's rotating on that rear leg there, it may look like this foot is turned backwards, but I did not actually turn it backwards. If I turned it backwards, it would look like this, and then I would rear hip coil and it would be turned even more backwards. So yeah, just to make that clear. And then the other thing is, with a lot of rear hip coil, without any shoulder coil, I'm already reaching back here, which is aligned with the target, which is this way. So if I shoulder coil now, it feels like I'm actually throwing this way. You can throw like this, and it's not rounding, because if I come into the pocket, my body's not in the way. The disc is in front of my chest as I rotate. It's totally fine. It just feels weird, and a lot of people don't like it. Rounding is only when the shoulder angle collapses here, and now the disc is getting stuck behind your body. But a way that a lot of people deal with this, if they coil a lot with the hip and their shoulders, is widening the reach back angle. Now it feels like I'm throwing in the direction I'm throwing because my arm is lined up with it. Okay, so now that I've defined rear hip coil, I can explain what I'm trying to do here in relation to my run-up line. So as I'm normally running up in this linear way, 2 lanes, I go like this, and now I'm trying to bring my brace foot forward and rear hip coil at the same time. But oftentimes, because right before the X step, I've just put my weight on this front foot, as I X step, my weight is a little bit forward because of this offset of the feet being offset. So as I start trying to rear hip coil, my weight is already kind of coming down onto the brace and making me feel rushed. I can still get pretty good rear hip coil, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's optimal, I guess, based on this test I just did, which made it easier to get power. So what I'm doing in this test is feeling my weight shift kind of curving off the line, the run-up line a little bit. So like this, I get here, and now I'm going to press a little bit this way, which I'll call, if this is north, this is east, this is west, and this is south. So right before my X step, I'm going to press my weight a little bit more east so that I can, boom, balance better on that X step. Now I feel I have a lot more time while I'm balanced. My weight's still going forward, but it's going a little bit more diagonally instead of just north. I'm balanced. Now I can rear hip coil a lot more easily with that balance. But because it's turning my whole body around that hip, it makes my brace want to kind of swing out a little bit more wide, kind of northwest instead of just north. This is an exaggeration, of course, but that's how I'm thinking about it. So run up line, my momentum's going linearly, but then there is some weight shift that's curving in this east and then west direction, but it's more northeast and northwest kind of slightly. So I guess I'm going to call it curvy run up. Going linear, but I'm now kind of thinking about this curve of my weight shift to help me balance. And this is something that I think Simon looks like he does particularly well and kind of more exaggerated than many people do. So I'm still getting used to this. I haven't worked on it that much, but for next session, what I'm going to try to do is get that brace foot to stay a little bit more to the right for longer before kind of swooping out to the left like we see in Simon's, just to see how that feels. I was probably distracted by focusing on the weight shift in the X step and the rear hip coil. So I didn't have enough attention left over to also focus on getting the brace foot to move more like we see here, so I could also see how that feels. So once I started seeing some pretty good speeds, I wanted to see what would happen if I did a faster run-up. But normally when I do a faster run-up, I do a crow hop with the X step, so that started happening here. Also, I was running up a little bit more to the right of the line, and so the two lanes are here with the feet, but the right foot is not crossing over the line. And from this point, it looks like I just brace straight forward linearly, but I did hop more of my weight over to the side onto the X step, so it still felt like I was bracing more out to the side than usual, but that's something I'm going to try to exaggerate even more next session, and try not to do a crow hop so I have more time to coil and brace more out to the side with exaggeration, so I can get more of a clear feeling of what that feels like and how much of it I want to do.